We're going to take a look at IndustrySelect institutional version, which is what allows libraries, universities, colleges, and other academic institutions to give their members access to IndustrySelect as a research tool. Now, the primary difference between the institutional version and the standard version of IndustrySelect is that members of the institution do not have to have a login. They do not have to have an account with a password. They're simply going to go to a designated URL for your institution where they're going to be able to access the information directly. So every institution has its own private URL. For the purposes of the demo today, we're going to take a look at Indian Prairie Library. So their custom URL is simply indianprairie.easyselect.com. Now, this URL could be given out to members. It could be linked on a homepage for the institution. It could also be placed as an icon on the desktop of PCs within the institution. And so any variety of different ways to access this URL. But when we go to indianprairie.easyselect.com, you'll see that it immediately logs us in. There's nothing we have to do. Right on the dashboard screen, shows the institution name, logo, also shows the member what particular database they have access to through the institution. So in this case, this is an Illinois-based library. They have access to the Illinois Manufacturers Database. But of course, you can subscribe to any database that we offer. It could be a particular state, it could be a region, it could be the entire nation, it could be a particular industry or companies of a certain size. You can specify which manufacturer's database you want to give your members access to. Right from the main dashboard screen, you'll see that there's two ways to do research using the institutional version of IndustrySelect. The first is perform a search, and this is where you would look up an individual company one at a time just to get more information on that particular company. And the second way is through the build a list function. And this is where you would input a set of criteria and be returned a list of companies that match that particular criteria. So let's take a look at perform a search. When we go into this tab, you'll see that there's a number of different ways you can search for an individual company. You can search by company name, you can search by a particular contact name, you can search by all or part of a phone number or an address, you can enter a brand name, or you can enter a web or email address. So using any of these components, you can perform a search. We're going to take a look at Kraft Foods here today. So we're going to go ahead and enter that into the company name field and hit the search button. And what we'll get back here is a list of 5 companies that match Kraft Foods in the name. And we're going to take a look at the Northfield location, which is their headquarters. And you'll see right from the search results here, there's some quick icons to visit the website and also the phone number. But when we click on the link, it will bring up the profile for this particular location. And you'll notice all the different information that we offer on every company. We have all the basic contact information plus website and email for many. Information about the company size, number of employees, their annual sales, square footage, when they were established, their areas of distribution. Scrolling on down, product and service information, their business description, their business classification, any brand names that they have, SIC codes, NAICS codes, and then further on down, executive names and titles at this location. And then all the way down at the bottom here are related news articles. These are articles that we find on the web that pertain to this particular company, and so they're linked in, and you can click on them and bring up the actual article. So if you're doing research, we've got a lot of different information available. And of course, up on the top right here, we have a map or satellite view, and you can also do driving directions. If somebody needs to go visit that location, they can use that function to get the directions. They can export this profile to PDF, and they can also print it. So again, if they're doing research, they can pull up the company, print out that information, or save it to a flash drive or any other means that they have to save a file. They can export it to a PDF and do that. When you see this little icon here, this is the family tree view. And this is what relates the location that we're looking at to other locations if it's a multi-location company. So in this case, we're looking at Kraft Foods in Northfield, but we can actually look at any other Kraft Foods in Illinois since we have access to the Illinois database. So if I take a look here at the Kraft Foods group in Morton Grove, I can click on View Profile, and you'll see now that I've pulled up the profile for this location in Morton Grove. So all their contact information, number of employees at this location, business description that pertains specifically to this location, executives that are specific to this location, and you'll see a new section down here appear with parent company information. That's because we're looking at a subsidiary location of the Kraft Foods Group in Northfield. So we have the parent company information here and parent company names and titles of the key executives, and we can of course go back to the parent company profile and again related news articles. So that's how you would research an individual company using IndustrySelect. If I go back to the main tab, the other function again here is build a list, and this is where you would input a set of criteria and be returned back a list of companies that match that criteria. So if somebody's performing research, maybe they're seeking employment or they're doing a research paper for school, and they need to know companies of a certain kind or in a certain area or of a certain size. And using this interface, the member of your institution can input a set of criteria and be presented with a list of companies that match that. So we're looking at Illinois, so by default 18,808 companies up here. And we can now begin to specify individual criteria. So for example, I can say within 5 miles of zip code 60561, you'll see it moved it over to the right, and our count now is updated. There are 318 companies that fall within 5 miles of 60561. So you can add cities, counties, area codes, zip codes, a variety of different options here. You can also specify particular industries by SIC codes or NAICS codes or business classifications, and company size. You can input number of employees, annual sales, square footage, and you can mix and match all these criteria elements to come up with a set of criteria that will return a list of companies that you're looking for. You can even go into advanced features such as executive titles and functions if you're looking for CFOs or companies with a finance executive, and there's a whole variety of even more advanced search criteria such as minority-owned companies and woman-owned companies. The My Criteria tab here on the left gives the member a nice overview of all the criteria that they've selected. And what's nice about IndustrySelect is that we've really built it so that you don't need to read an instruction manual. Everything's laid out very clearly. You'll notice these little question mark icons that the user can hover over at any point and get further explanation as to what that is and how to use it. So we've done what we can to minimize the number of questions that the administrators at your institution would receive from somebody attempting to use this interface. It's very self-explanatory. Now, once they've inputted all their criteria, they can either click up on the count here in the top right, or they can click on My List. Either way, it's going to take them to the results page, where it shows them the list of companies that match the criteria that they've inputted. So in my case of the example here, I've inputted within 5 miles of 60561, and these are all the companies that are within that particular area. And so again, we can scroll through here and take a look at these at any point. We can click on any one of them and bring up the full company profile, which we can of course export to PDF or again send to the printer. And it has all the pertinent information on that particular company. And you can close it and go on to the next one. Now when they're done using IndustrySelect, they can either close their browser or click the logout button. But what happens is when you subscribe for your institution, you set up the number of simultaneous users that you want to allow at any given time. And of course the cost structure is based on how many simultaneous users you want to allow at any given point. So by default you're going to get one user, but you can expand that to have a number of simultaneous users as desired. When the member logs out of this resource, it then allows somebody else to use it. So for example, if I were to log out, and I'm going to log in from another computer here just to show you what happens, but when I go to log back in, it'll put me in a queue if it doesn't have anything available. So let's go back to indianprairie.easyselect.com. And you'll see now that I've been placed in a queue because we've exceeded the maximum number of simultaneous users. And this will continue to refresh until such time that it becomes available. So if I log out at the other computer, you'll notice within 10 seconds here, this will go ahead and refresh and will actually take me into the application. And here we are. So again, you can expand or contract the number of simultaneous users that you want to allow at any given time. And we will provide you with usage statistics as to how often each of those users are actually being used. So, for example, the number of sessions, the average weekly sessions, the number of searches, and the average number of searches per session. That information will be available to you over a date span that we specify so that you can actually see how often each of those users are being used. And we also give you a statistic, the number of turnaways. This is so that you know how often somebody was placed in that queue to wait to use the service. So this is really just an indication as to whether or not it's time to expand the number of simultaneous users on your subscription. If you find that we're turning away a lot of members because they have to wait in that queue, then that might be a good time to think about expanding the number of simultaneous users. The other thing that we want to mention is that everything here is controlled by IP address security. So when you subscribe to this service, you will provide us with the IP address range for your institution. That is, when you browse the web, the IP addresses that you use to browse. And based on that IP address, that's how we know to let people into this service. And what's nice about that is there's nothing special you need to do on any of the computers at your institution. You simply can place a shortcut or an icon to yourinstitution.easyselect.com and it will load automatically because your computers are within that IP address range. There's two more benefits. The first one is that if anybody comes into your institution and you offer Wi-Fi and they get onto your Wi-Fi, they can access this resource from their private computer. So if they come in with a laptop and they get onto your Wi-Fi, they can actually type Indian Prairie, in this case, .easyselect.com, and be allowed into the application. And of course, EasySelect works on any device, PC, Mac, tablet, even smartphone. It doesn't matter. It will run in any browser on any type of computer. So if somebody comes in with a MacBook, no problem at all. And the final benefit to the way that we control access with IP address is that if you allow members of your institution to log on from home, if you have what's called a proxy server, they can actually use this resource from their home. So for example, Indian Prairie Public Library, you can go to their website, and if you're a member of that library, you can create an account and be able to log in and access certain resources. This resource would be available through that program because through the proxy server, you're logging in and then browsing as the library's IP address in that case. So if you have this sort of remote controlled access through your website for your institution, you can give your members access to EasySelect from the comfort of their homes or their offices. They don't actually have to come into your institution. The one final point that I wanted to mention is that we also can provide statistics in counter format. Now, counter is an acronym. It stands for Counting Online Usage of Networked Electronic Resources. And it's a program that some institutions are using to measure how often electronic resources are being used. If you use it, we can provide you the stats in that format. It's a specialized Excel CSV format, and we can provide that to you. If you want to know more about it, the website is projectcounter.org, but it's quickly becoming a mainstream means to track the usage of electronic resources. So that's sort of the basic overview of the institutional access of EasySelect. We invite you to contact us with any questions. Thank you.